I'm Alexandra Kreis, and you're listening to Outer Travel Inner Journey. In my own search for self-understanding, I have met people from all walks of life. I bring to you a taste of these encounters. Hi, welcome back to Outer Travel Inner Journey. My guest on the show today is Leslie Lovlin. Hello, Leslie.
Hello, Alex.
Well, Leslie is located in, Grand Prairie, Alberta in Canada. It doesn't mean much to me, but Alberta does mean a lot to me. So in a sense, I know where that is. And thank you for coming on the show despite the time difference. And I'm very curious how we're going to go through this conversation because Leslie is a clinical Ayurvedic practitioner and also a Panchakarma specialist, and not only clinic Ayurvedic practitioner, but also specialist. So beyond the day-to-day consultant of Ayurveda, Leslie took time to study Ayurveda in depth to slowly go deeper and deeper as you do with these kind of holistic healthcare systems. So hi again.
Hi. Thanks for
Hi.
having me.
It's good to have you. How long does the study really take, Leslie? I mean, like as in practical for now, just to get a scope.
Yeah, so the clinical Ayurvedic specialist program, it was around 4 years
Mm,
total, in between, about 4 years total. And then I took the Panchakarma program, which was another 11 months.
11 months. Is
Yeah.
that only possible if you have some accreditation in the background, like the clinical Ayurvedic specializing, that you can do the top up of the Panchakarma specialist, or can you dive
No.
straight in?
Yeah, no, there was definitely a mixture of people that had not taken any Panchakarma or sorry, Ayurveda training at all. But I felt fortunate having my knowledge of Ayurveda going into the Panchakarma program because it was definitely worth understanding what Ayurveda was before moving into it, for sure.
Can you give a brief explanation to those listeners who haven't heard of what Panchakarma is, maybe have a little bit of an idea that Ayurveda is a holistic Indian healing form, but not so familiar with the Panchakarma concept?
Yeah, so Panchakarma it's for cleansing the body, the mind. It's for balancing, for healing, and also rejuvenation.
Yeah.
So it encompasses all of that, and it means Pancha means five, and
Hmm.
Karma means action. So there's these different actions that we do to help cleanse the body for sure.
Yeah, and as far as I know, Panchakarma myself, but you've went through the Panchakarma yourself. I know it as being some sort of retreat and that you can correct actions, but that these corrections of things that have deeply rooted in yourself as imbalances or diseases, as the English language offers so well. But what I heard and learned is only that you need to take really time to do Panchakarma in order to get to the root of it. But having had your own experience and becoming a Panchakarma specialist, what have you established, or what is the key intake for you? How can you offer this service for those that can't take out 3 months, for example, to see you for it?
Yes, exactly. So you can do a 3-day Panchakarma program. You could do 7 days. Again, depends on the depth of each individual's issues. So, and you can also do at home Panchakarmas if you are working with a trained, specialist. so that they can help guide you through it. For sure, you'd have to have somebody helping you.
But what's the difference then between, a lot of people might even know Ayurvedic cleanses. What's the difference between the Panchakarma, or is there a difference between the Panchakarma and the cleanse?
So the Panchakarma definitely deals with enemas, and then you would have to know why you're using them enemas. So whether they're decoctions or whether they're oil enemas, different things like that. That's mainly one of the bigger things with the Panchakarma is
Yeah.
the enemas, for sure.
Oh, wow. I thought that the Panchakarma includes treatments we're not able to do ourselves. That's why I'm really surprised. And I offer, and I know, like my sister, for example, she is a health educator and she does enemas in her detoxes, so do I. But I thought that Panchakarma is a lot of the treatments that you can't do yourself, like the ghee in the eyes and, oh yeah, don't get afraid now, listener, but there is something.
Yes,
Yeah.
them are definitely treatments that you cannot do yourself. The Shirodhara, for sure, the
Yes.
Oil on the third eye. Um, Even the Abhyanga. I mean, we could do self Abhyanga, but traditionally it's four-handed Abhyanga. So there's two people doing it in sync, and the steam tents. Yeah. So there's definitely treatments that we cannot do at home.
Right. And would you say there is a benefit of having it done besides doing it at home? Where is the huge difference in committing to being treated opposed to being just advised in treatment?
Well, there's a sense of being taken care of for sure by somebody else, which allows the letting go of internal stuff. Because you're being taken care of, and you're also on a program. Usually, when you're doing a Panchakarma treatment program, you wake up at a certain time. You're being fed. You're in meditation. You're in some sort of yoga. There's many aspects to it, so it is a good thing to be, to go and get it done for sure.
Yeah. What was your own key takeaway or best memory of experiencing Panchakarma in the first place, Leslie?
It was mental. It cleared up so much mental toxicity for me.
Yes.
That is my experience with it. I had a huge shift in my mind. That is one of the biggest things.
How did you notice? How did you recognize that shift?
I recognized it. It must have gradually happened. I mean, I've done Panchakarma a few times, and one was quite intense. It was a 3-week one.
Yeah.
But how I recognized it was the same thing came up that would normally have affected me, and it didn't affect me anymore. It was,
for example, is there something you can talk about?
The stress of everyday, life of working. We run a different business, which is construction, and there's a lot of different things, different types of there's lots of employees. So things that would bother me before, I even would start to recognize each one of them as their own individual person. I just started to, it incorporated just allowing myself to allow them to be themselves. That is really what I started to recognize about myself.
Yeah. And what is the myth around, like, Panchakarma? I know it as a 5-crown treatment, and very auspicious, very necessary. And what is the myth you can take away from this? What a lot of people really want to do, and then they end up going and getting it done on their holidays for 10 days. They return, and what I often see as an Ayurvedic practitioner myself and having done treatments is that they completely, they suffer from more imbalances after. Yeah. So what is it that you can help to debunk or demystify here about Panchakarma?
It is definitely very, very crucial to do the post after the Panchakarma. There's the 3 stages of it, right?
Mm.
Many people will go home right after having the Panchakarma treatments done and then go back to living their normal life, which, we all have our normal lives to live,
Yeah.
but there's a process to reintroducing yourself back into that for sure. And if any of the steps really are missed, the effects are definitely not long lasting.
Yeah, they're not long lasting, and they can, I think they can almost bounce back on you, because when you when you get when you get to that stage of coming to a really deep rooted problem and it's about to surface, sometimes it takes, as you say, care of the practitioner and to hold a space and be held in the space, and you have to create and establish a routine that keeps holding that space for you to go into the deeper healing. It's almost like if you just got the band-aid from the hospital and then you are being sent home and you kind of keep stubbing your toe on that band-aid, right? A little
Yes.
bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Is there a particular story that ties you deeply to Ayurveda and believing in its magnificence and ways of healing that you can share maybe with the listener?
Yes, the story for me definitely was my son. He got into a accident, and he had a traumatic brain injury, and he was in a coma for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The diagnosis was he would either be dead, or a quadriplegic, or a vegetable.
Jesus.
And that is what science said.
Yeah.
Science, all the x-rays, and I'm so grateful for the neurologists and the doctors that worked on him, because without that, he wouldn't have survived either. But they basically said to go home because he was not going to survive. And he is today walking, living on his own, driving. And I honestly believe it was, a little bit of knowledge I had before this accident happened that I used on him in the hospitals. And yeah, that's definitely where my true belief with Ayurveda came about, because used, we didn't know the outcome, but
That incident was 2012, as I recall you telling me beforehand. And what were the main applications that are so different to what we call conventional medicine? What was it that you felt gave it the drive for him to return to life?
so I definitely worked with the 5 senses. At that time, that's really all I knew. So I juiced for him. I would have fresh, organic, greens and vegetables, and he had a feeding tube, and I would juice every morning for him, and that's what I would feed him daily.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like what was being fed to him, the traditional, what they feed them in the hospital. I just didn't feel like it was getting on a cellular level, to rejuvenate him.
Yeah.
And then I would burn, I'd have aromatherapy going in his room at the hospital. We would all do treatments on him, like body treatments. I was a massage therapist at the time, so and I would use oils and, different. He also had psoriasis so bad when he went in there, and it disappeared while he was in the hospital. I would play music for him, meditation music. I would have people record so he was familiar, like he could hear the voice of familiar people. I felt that was very healing. I wouldn't allow any negative talk in his room from anyone. You know, I believed he was able to hear.
And what does that make, like where do we see this knowledge or this wisdom in Ayurveda coming through? When you say like I hear you talking about vibration and life force, as we call it, so prana, for those who don't know. But how else are you being taught in Ayurveda to incorporate that, and why is it so essential from an Ayurvedic perspective, of course?
So, from an Ayurvedic perspective, it is really important to understand that we do heal from all the five senses. So, everything that we take in is either medicine or poison.
Yeah, that is, I think, the best distinction. If you are not sure what Ayurveda can offer you, it sounds often very simplistic, and I see people being not convinced because of the simplicity of that. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with a lot of civilization issues these days, the morbidity and whatever else is showing up in society right now, increased immune deficiencies. And, and the big question here is this because we have mistreated our senses or not? Is there something that you know about it or can share?
Yes. And I mean, one of the things is the faster we move, the faster we age, the
Mm,
faster our mind moves. And so, you know, as we know, there's so much stimulation, which I believe is causing more disease. We're not taking that time to, be in silence, to rest, to recover, to rejuvenate.
yeah.
And there's just too much happening. Our minds are, on overload and multitasking and, mhm.
Yeah, and that is from an Ayurvedic perspective. That is the point where we try to incentivize like change of lifestyle, which seems pretty boring. And my latest guest on the show, who's gonna be, showing after we streamed your interview, but she also said she was able to tick the list of healthy eating and movement and meditation, but what was lacking was a frame of mind, which you have to learn, and which is often given in the style of a retreat form to learn it and absorb it, and then hopefully to take it home, right? Is that what also is being taught in Panchakarma?
Yes.
Yeah.
And nature is one of our biggest teachers.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So what is there that we can leave the listener with? I mean, we're talking about, becoming curious and that it's good to be treated, but also that there is options of looking into it yourself. What would be a first step or first advice to our listeners in the sense of how can they get closer to Ayurveda and get a sense of it and sniff it out?
Yeah, I mean, there's many programs, and it's always great to start, with yourself. So you learn best through embodying it,
Hmm.
and yeah, Ayurveda is definitely becoming, more widespread, which is so great to see and hear. There's still a lot of people that haven't heard the word,
Hmm.
but it's a sister science to yoga. So, yeah, there's a lot of,
Yeah, we're expecting it to be on the rise. I mean, I noticed that Ayurveda doesn't sound like a mouthful of vowels to people anymore. anymore, and everybody has at least heard the name. And I think a lot of people get to know it through a treatment as a massage, but we both come from that background, but we also know that there, like this is just the tiniest blip of Ayurveda. What would be a next step you think is useful and helpful for someone?
I think the first step is actually getting assessed by somebody that understands Ayurveda, because there's so much information out there.
Mm.
And my experience with that is people can become more confused.
Yes.
So I feel being, assessed properly so that they understand where their natural constitution lies, where their imbalances lie, then they can move forward from there. But
Yeah.
until you have, a really good understanding of where you're at, it can become more confusing. And I think that is where people will drop off, because it's like, this is just way too overwhelming.
Exactly. Exactly. And then, of course, there is the easiest way of being guided through something that has deep and lasting effects, which we both offer, which is like the yearly or bi-yearly cleansing process in Ayurveda, which people would know as detoxing, and which in other methods you can do at any time of the year. But I have been like, my own conviction is that it's best to cleanse at the junction of the year instead of doing it in the middle of, winter, middle of summer or something. Can you relate to this conviction of mine?
Yes, absolutely. So twice a year, spring and fall,
Mm.
like you said, at the conjunction, there's, the two cleanses that Ayurveda believes in. And we do and they're two different ones, because in the spring, we are removing the accumulation of kapha that happened over the winter, or, early spring, right? So,
Mm.
and then in the fall, we are preparing for the winter months to come. So they are two, they're similar but different cleanses that happen.
Yeah, exactly. And they might show up in when you get the acknowledgement of how your body has slowly transformed from its usual balance into one of the dosha forms, which, if you're not familiar with it, we're talking about pitta, kapha, and vata here, which are made from the five elements. Yeah. So. Yeah, that is a good way to start. I also notice it, and there is easy ways of doing that cleanse. I don't know, you're offering one. Is that one that's traditional, or is that a one that is more steeped in opening up into the five senses and noticing the shift in the mind most of all, which we probably all need more and more than just a shift in the way we feed ourselves. Mm.
Yes. Yeah, so mine definitely, I do introduce some traditional um, different things, and I do go into the part where they work with their own body treatments and different things like that. So that's where my training came from, was more of a traditional way
Mm.
of doing it. So I do incorporate, different parts of it.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Um, yeah, there's not much left to say about Ayurveda, but besides that, I think one of my things I want to push forward is, when we are talking as Ayurvedic practitioners and as holistic practitioners, when I mean, me personally, I never try to exclude conventional medicine as it's essential, because we are not, allowed as much as what doctors and trained doctors can do, like doing blood tests. But I would always say, your health is a good investment.
Yeah.
And to even if you don't pay for your doctor in your country, which I don't need to do here in Germany, but I would always kind of go the extra mile, because just look around you, what happens and how people are, grasping for more embodiment and more freedom of mind and balance. And does your doctor really deliver that to your doorstep, or do you feel you are already kind of putting an eye out to somebody else who is in a holistic business? That's what I feel like people need to acknowledge. It's not a spending and a waste of money, but it's an investment if you trust someone, and that someone will always repay the trust and is trained in holding space for you. And space is often connected to time, and then in that time space relation, healing happens not in the compression of fixed solution and applied methods like, I don't know, pills and quick treatments of by physiologists. Or what is your experience? How do you relate to that?
So Ayurveda definitely teaches us to take responsibility for our health.
Hmm.
And from experience with myself and with clients, the more responsibility we take for ourselves, the less we really have to go see a Western, or, the medical doctors, which
Yeah.
so grateful for the medical doctors for sure.
Hmm.
But I find we have become too much to rely on just going and getting a quick fix with that. So the more we learn how to take the responsibility for our own health, the more empowered we are for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And empowerment just means, in a sense, and a true empowerment comes through deeper wisdom and knowledge, being guided by a force beyond the ego and the mind. That's what we seek in Ayurveda. And when you are tapped into what nature is providing you and whispering to you, then that cannot be of evil source or of whatever, bad source. That's what I always feel, like nature always looks out for us in the best form.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. And Ayurveda, it really helps us understand when we start to go out of balance, how to bring ourselves back in.
Yeah.
The more we start to understand ourselves, then we recognize when and we all go out of balance. That's just human nature. So it's just, the more we understand who we are, the easier it is to bring ourselves back in.
Yeah, it's almost like I think about Germans who like to, who are totally DIY. I don't know how the Canadian work, but a lot of the things that Ayurveda could teach you is exactly that, to become your DIY person in health and in trusting your gut and your intuitive powers, that you applied so well when you were looking after your son in the hospital back then, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Great. Thank you for this beautiful conversation, Leslie. And if you want to connect to Leslie and get a treatment by her, she's also available online these days and has her own Panchakarma facilities in Canada, if you're located there. And we'll put your links and offers into the show notes. And otherwise, you wonder, you are on Instagram. Who are you again? It's a beautiful name your company took. What is it again? Remind me.
Inner Sage Ayurveda.
Inner Sage Ayurveda, yes. Stemming from your own beautiful trust into your intuition, right? This is how you picked the name. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel we all are our own guru.
Yeah. Absolutely. We are. If we
Yes.
learn to listen.
If we learn to listen. Yes. And that is what Ayurveda teaches us.
Thank you. Brilliant final sentence. Well, have a beautiful autumn and enjoy the fun of leading people through their healing journey. I can only highly recommend Leslie. She is such a beautiful, person, very loving person with highly intuitive insights. You will get only the best of the best if you work with her. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you next time, dear listener. If you enjoy listening to my podcast, please consider to become a patron at patreon.com/Alexandra Kreis and pledge your donation.